Clinton, it is night 2 of my midweek Maction binge. Good times. We went 2 for 2 on picks last night. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Busy day at work. Busy day yesterday. I think we finally sat down after long day of work. Parent teacher conference for preschool, which seems interesting to me. And then children to bed at like 9:15. We tuned
Ooh.
into the election coverage for like 5 minutes, and then decided to watch the new monster thing on Netflix with the Mendoza brothers. It's
Menendez?
the same Menendez brothers, same people that did the Dahmer series. So we're about an episode and a half through that, and
Okay.
it's pretty good. Until Leah fell asleep, and then I decided to pause it so that she didn't miss anything. But other than that, I'm good, man. I'm interested to talk about these playoff rankings. I've tried to prep myself, both what I look at and then what I've heard from different shows that I like to listen to about it, to try to give our best opinions on this today. How are you, Mr. Sakoviak?
Oh, just living the dream. I'm a little better now that Western Michigan just scored to tie the game up. So go Broncos. This is
Well,
a
go
go.
Bobcats, baby. 27-0.
Listen, it's a Go Bobcats podcast. It's a Go Broncos podcast tonight because I would like to make a little bit of money. So, yeah, we're gonna start a little bit tonight. We're gonna start tonight with now that I think about it, after last night, I probably shouldn't have played that sound because I'm having PTSD. But breaking news.
Real quick, can I cut this in real quick? I don't know if you watched any of the election coverage, but
I watched
what made me
the election coverage. I watched
what made me turn it off was when it would have a state that had 1% of votes in, and then it said projected winner beside it. I'm like, there's 1% of votes in. How do you have a projected winner for a state when you have 50 votes in? Like,
yeah,
what? I looked at Leah. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this stuff. I'm not watching this anymore. This is garbage. I'm turning it off.
No, and then it's like, well, then other states too, they can't even start counting the mail-in ballots till like 7 p.m. So it's like, well, they're going to be counting these for the next 900 years. So why am I going to waste my time?
Yeah, one of my patients today was like, well, I stayed up till 2 a.m. watching that. I'm like, I didn't, because you know what? It doesn't change the result if I'm awake or I go to bed. So I'm getting sleep.
Yeah,
like,
I will read about it.
It doesn't matter. Yeah,
we have a committee ranking, and I kind of hypothesized a little bit on our Monday show that I wonder if they're going to deviate from the AP poll at all, which they've done in the past. And they did exactly the opposite of that. And it is more or less the AP poll, at least at the top here, Clinton.
Yeah.
Top 5 here, we have Oregon at 1, Ohio State 2, followed by Georgia, Miami, and Texas. That is your exact same top 5 as the AP, except Georgia and Ohio State are flipped. From 6 to 10, it exactly mirrors the AP poll, with Penn State at 6, Tennessee 7, Indiana at 8, BYU at 9, and Notre Dame at 10. Alabama is in the 11th spot, the highest ranked 6-2 team, followed by a couple of one-loss teams in Boise State at 12, SMU at 13, Texas A&M at 14, and LSU at 15. Looking at that initial ranking, Clinton, is there anything that stood out to you? Any surprises that you have? Based on what we did, I don't know that I was necessarily surprised, because we kind of, when we did ours, I ranked at least my teams how I thought they should be ranked, not necessarily how I thought that they would be ranked. So I'm a little bit surprised in the sense that there was no deviation from the AP poll. I thought they might have dinged Penn State and Tennessee a little bit more for their lack of, maybe not Tennessee, but at least Penn State for their lack of quality wins. But anything notable jump out to you about the initial committee rankings?
Their 14, 15, and 16 was the exact same that I had. Just saying.
Very nice.
Nailed that part.
Very nice.
I got close to my prediction that Alabama would be top 10. They are 11th.
Very close. Yep.
I did not expect them to put Indiana in the top 5, even though I did. Hit the top 3 though. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. I think, honestly, even though Oregon's 9-0, if you really wanted to push hard to tell me peak Georgia or even peak Ohio State could be, it's fine. Those are the 3 best teams right now.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm a little surprised. I know Miami's undefeated, but we talked about this Monday. They have not played defense.
Mm-hmm.
They have been fighting off losses.
Yes.
For numerous weeks, playing with fire. They're going to get burned eventually. The fan of me kind of hopes maybe not to an extent. I know we're about to get ready to discuss here brand bias. Here I
Yes.
am pining for one, but it's been a long time since Miami has been relevant. And I get it that they are a big brand, but the last time they were a big brand, they lost in the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl to Ohio State in the national championship and have been irrelevant since then. So I can be a little okay with kind of that brand coming back there. Not surprised by Texas. I guess you could probably argue to flip-flop Penn State or Tennessee. We'll dive into some of that here soon.
Oh, no.
BYU top 10. I guess I was a little surprised to see Notre Dame at 10. And I have an intriguing question / perspective for you as we dive into these here, Ryan, before we jump into our pick'ems tonight about that Notre Dame scenario. Boise stands as 12. I think right now it would be interesting to me from a Big Ten perspective. Oregon gets the 1, but Ohio State gets the easier path in theory. Ohio State would be the 5 in this scenario, drawing Boise State for their first game. And I would assume a likely win in Columbus, and then would draw BYU as the 4 seed.
Yep.
Ohio State in that scenario might be a cakewalk to the semifinal. And that's no disrespect to Boise. Genty is elite. What would they do? Ohio State's probably put 9 guys in the box and say, let's see what you can do. And then I don't think BYU has the horses at all to play with Ohio State. Honestly, I would probably pick Boise State to beat BYU if somehow Boise State got in there. But overall, not too much. Ryan, can you name the one team from the AP Top 25 who is not in the college football playoff Top 25?
Vanderbilt.
It is Vandy. Vandy made it in the AP Top 25 this week, and the College Football Playoff Committee did not place them
Clinton,
in the top
do you know
25.
how I know that? Because can you tell me the team that is in the AP or in the committee top 25 that's not ranked in the AP poll? There might be more than one, but just the one that jumped out to me.
Who are you going to say?
Missouri is 24th.
I'm pretty sure. Isn't Missouri in the AP Top 25?
No, they're first in others receiving votes, which again is kind of laughable because they stink.
Well, I mean, Missouri does have the head-to-head. I can get that argument. But if you were to ask me more impressive team and more impressive win, Vanderbilt.
Well, I don't think it matters because if Brady Cook doesn't play, they're not.
Missouri has no shot.
They're going to get
They're
destroyed.
going to get beat by porous Oklahoma this weekend.
Yes. So 2 things that jumped out to me. One, with Boise already being in the top 12, depending on what happens in the Big 12, there's an outside chance that Boise actually gets a first-round bye. And I think we maybe discussed this a little bit. Well, I guess 3 things, because to your Ohio State point, I feel like a little bit of a playoff hipster because I feel like I've been saying this since like May, that being the 5 seed is going to be an easier path to the semifinals than being one of the first-round bye teams. And only like at the start of the year did people start picking up on that. But I completely agree with you. I would much rather be the 5 seed and not have to play the winner of I guess in this case, it would be Indiana, Notre Dame. No, it wouldn't be Indiana, Notre Dame. It would be Tennessee, Indiana if you're the number 1 seed in the first round. But
the only thing that irks me there as a fan of Ohio State, that would mean they'd go to the Big Ten championship and lose.
Right.
I don't want them to lose the Big Ten championship. I want them to win it.
You don't get the bye, and then you have that less. So, like, speaking of it from the Notre Dame perspective, back in the yesteryear when we thought that Notre Dame getting the 5 seed might be an outside possibility given the schedule, it works if you're Notre Dame, or it works if you're, like in the hypothetical scenario where Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana all finished 12-0. And one of them missed the Big Ten title game on a tiebreaker, but then ended up getting the 5 seed as a 12-0 team, not having to play the Big Ten title game, because then that serves as a de facto bye week and you get an extra week of prep. Whereas if you lose the Big Ten title game, then you got to turn around, 10 days, 2 weeks later and play another game. So that's where the kind of the attrition
coming off a loss too.
Yep. Where kind of injury attrition could potentially become a thing, that wear and tear, yada, yada, yada. But kind of going along your point with the brand bias, I feel like how the committee ranked Indiana and BYU, I tweeted this from our account, and we kind of talked about this a little bit on Monday. It wasn't
NIU return to TD kickoff.
I'm like 5 minutes ahead of you. Oh, are you watching Ohio?
It's just a delay. It's showing me the latest score update on OU.
Oh.
So yes, I am delayed technically.
Shit. And NIU just turned the ball over. That's not great. Not good for me. Not good for me. So we talked about it a little bit on Monday. It wasn't quite the absolute worst case scenario for Indiana and BYU, but dude, it's pretty close, man, because you're behind. I mean, we figured they'd be behind Ohio State and Georgia regardless, but you're behind Penn State, you're behind Tennessee, and you're behind Texas. So the committee's saying to you, as an undefeated team, we don't respect what you have done to this point in the season. And, I mean, I think the caveat is we've seen in the past with past committees that these rankings are fluid week by week, that they're apt to shake things up in a way that the AP poll isn't necessarily. Like in the AP poll, it feels like unless you have a real hot dog performance against a bad team in a winning effort, they don't really drop you. Whereas in the committee era, if you look really impressive, regardless of who you're playing, someone else doesn't look as good. It seems like they're more willing to reshuffle these rankings week by week. So maybe that's something that happens here too. But what this ranking indicates to me is as soon as Indiana or BYU lose a game, this feels like the committee kind of hedging their bets and saying, all right, well, we don't really respect what you've done at all. And now that you've lost a game, so we're going to Iowa State you and put you back at 17 or something
and
along
it's
those lines.
going to make it damn near impossible for them to get in.
Yes. And I mean, there's definitely a world where, Indiana boat races Michigan this weekend and then plays Ohio State close. Maybe they don't move all that much, right? Like Penn State's still number 6, despite the fact that they have also played no one. And their only resume point, it seems like, is quote unquote playing a back and forth game with Ohio State, which is kind of a laughable revisionist history for how that game went, considering they went up 10-0 and then trailed almost the entire rest of the game. But yeah, man, I like when we were kind of hypothesizing these on Monday, I thought that there'd be an outside chance that the Big 12 could get 2 teams into the playoff if BYU got upset in the Big 12 title game. Now I'm thinking that the Big 12 is probably only going to get whoever ends up winning that title game based on where they have BYU. That was kind of my big takeaway with it, is the big brands kind of won out here for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about some blue blood disrespect or some big brand bias. Indiana, SMU, BYU, 9-0, 8-1, 9-0. In regards to Indiana specific, since we're a Big Ten podcast, let's bring up Georgia and Michigan from 2023. At this exact point in the season, excuse me, got a little frog in the throat there. If you were to compare Indiana at this point in 2024 to those 2 teams in 2023, Indiana is 103rd in strength of resume right now, or strength of resume, and
wait, 100. They're 100
strength of schedule. Strength of schedule, and then they have an average margin of victory of like 32. Georgia this time last year, strength of schedule was 100 with a average margin of victory of 25. Michigan had a strength of schedule of 109, I believe, with an average margin of victory of 34. So all very similar, right? All teams were undefeated to this point. My point being here, if I were to take the logo of Indiana off of their helmet and put it next to these, or take Indiana's logo off and put Georgia's name or logo on it, Ohio State's logo on it, Michigan's logo on it, they'd be a top 5 team. I think part of the thing that Indiana has working against them versus what these other teams had and still have this year, Indiana did not start in the top 25. Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Bama, yada, yada, usually start top 5, top 10. They have much less work to do to get there, and then they have much less work to do to stay there. The Hoosiers have to work harder to get the respect that they deserve. And to that point, what else can you ask for a team whose strength of schedule may be 103, but they have obliterated every single opponent they have faced this year? Yes, their smallest margin was 14 points, but that was without the Maple Missile, Curtis Rourke, and a backup quarterback coming in who played well against a good Washington team. Everyone else they have demolished by 3 scores or more. What else can Indiana do? They cannot pick their schedule. The players don't pick the schedule. Signetti doesn't pick the schedule. They can only play what's on the schedule, and they have just massacred every team. It is a Halloween Michael Myers massacre every week when Indiana plays. They can't do much else. And to your point, they're at 8. So I think they're kind of right on that cusp of the committee being like, well, if you lose this week to Michigan, you're pretty much fried unless you beat Ohio State. You're going to be out of the top 12. You're not going to have a chance to get back in. What I do think is the opposite is, and we're going to get to the pick'ems here soon, I think Indiana is going to whip Michigan's ass because I think they're going to play the disrespect card and they're going to want to impress. And I think they're going to hammer Michigan. And that is clearly going to give away what my pick is tonight, even though if people don't know the spread. But Indiana they're hosting Michigan. They're not going to the Big House. They are hosting them. I think you might see something similar to what they did to Nebraska to Michigan. They're out for blood in this game. Now, since we're on these 4, Ryan, I want to give you a blind resume. Now, you kind of already got the Indiana one. So for those who maybe didn't tune in or don't truly know, I'm going to give you 4 teams, blind resume here. Hopefully I can pronounce Sagarin correctly.
Close enough.
So team 1 is 7-1 against the Sagarin top 30. They are 1-1. Their strength of schedule is 28. Strength of resume 6. Team 2, 8-1. The Sagarin top 30, they are also 1-1. Strength of schedule, 72. Strength of resume, 13. Team 3 is 9-0. They have a 0-0 record against the Sagarin top 30. Strength of schedule, 103. Strength of resume, 7. Team 4 is also 9-0. They are 2-0 against the Sagarin top 30. A strength of schedule of 63 and strength of record of 4. Ryan, can you identify who team 1 is based on what I gave you?
Team 1's Penn State.
Yes. Who would be team 2?
What were the numbers for team 2?
Team 2 is 8-1.
Okay.
They're 1-1 against the top 30. Strength of schedule 72 and strength of record 13.
Oh, bollocks. Is that one Ohio State?
No, that is SMU.
Ooh, okay.
SMU's 1-1. Their loss is to BYU. I'm blanking on who their win was against. Oh, it was Pitt. They beat Pitt. They obliterated Pitt.
They beat Pitt and they beat Louisville.
Yes, so I guess depends on which one fell there. So technically it could be 2-1, right? Because if you give them both those wins, depending on where they fall in that Sagarin top 30, if we want to go generic top 30, they're 2-1. Team 3 is 9-0, 0-0 against the top 30. Strength of schedule 103, strength of record 7. Who you got?
That's Indiana.
It is. And then do you know the second 9-0 team that I listed?
That was BYU.
BYU. So the reason I bring this up is if you look at team 1 and team 2, Penn State to SMU, they're pretty comparable, right? Both 8-1, 7-1. They're 1-1 against the top 30. Strength of schedule is a little bit different. Strength of record is pretty close. Yet somehow SMU sits at what? 13th in this poll?
They are 13th.
13th, while Penn State is 6th. They're so far away, yet being so similar. I found that quite interesting that clearly the committee is not impressed at all at this point with SMU. When we all thought that loss to BYU at the beginning of the season was going to be a death sentence for them, it's a loss by 3 points to a 9-0 undefeated team and currently Big 12 favorite. And Big 12 favorite sits at 9 with a better strength of schedule and a better strength of record and a better record against the top 30 than Indiana does. And yet they're behind the Hoosiers. It's just interesting how they place everything there and how you look at that, right? Like what I feel like is you apply logic to one team and then you compare it to the next team and they use a different logic to put it there.
Well, right, Clinton. It's because, numbers never lie, but they can be manipulated to fit a narrative.
Absolutely.
And it feels like that's because I don't understand. I don't think anybody, someone knows. I don't know that it's well known how ESPN's strength of schedule thing works because, and the other thing I don't like about strength of schedule versus something like strength of record is because strength of schedule factors in your entire schedule. So Penn State's getting bolstered by, I think it was the 28th ranked strength of schedule, 28th best, however you want to phrase that. But it's because they played Ohio State, a game that they lost.
I was going to say they're being held up by a loss right now.
Yes.
A loss. I would like to know if we did the first playoff comparison, if Penn State had not played Ohio State yet, what their strength of record or strength of schedule would be.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Ohio State's this week, right? If it's a week after, just to see what the number would be. But they're being held up by a loss right now. So then I fashion back to, yes, you only lost by a little bit, but if you watched with the eye test and saw that game, Penn State's offense was inept. They didn't score a single touchdown. They were up 10-0 and lost. Ohio State had multiple missed opportunities to put that game further away from them. If I were to stand here today and tell you, Ryan, I think Ohio State is at least 17 points better than Notre Dame. Or not Notre Dame, Jesus. I looked at my Notre Dame piece on here. 17 points better than Penn State. They won by what? 7? So you'd have to add 10 more points to that. I think they're 17 points better. All the Penn State players want to play that game again. I don't think they want to do that because I think Ohio State's going to blow your doors off. Because I don't think they'll make those same mistakes again. So I guess fashioning back to what we were talking about, like the difference between that SMU, BYU, and Indiana, and this point, why Indiana is behind Penn State when all they've done is dominate everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Take away Penn State has the loss to Ohio State, which holds them up and I guess makes them higher quality than Indiana. Penn State has not dominated everyone. They barely beat BG.
Mm-hmm.
The West Virginia game has not turned out well for them because West Virginia is not good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they demolished Kent State. Who hasn't? OU is going to score as many points as Penn State did in that game tonight. Like
Clinton, they were trailing Wisconsin late in the third quarter
until the pick six changed the game.
Like we watched Alabama go into Madison and obliterate that Wisconsin team. And I get that's a little different because Tyler Van Dyke got hurt in the first series. So, they're probably reeling a little bit from that. Okay, but then also we watched Wisconsin last week and get obliterated by Iowa.
Yep.
And it's a team that Penn State struggled with for 3.5 quarters.
And Iowa showed more offense against Wisconsin than Penn State did.
Yes. Yes.
Way more offense.
Yeah, man. So I don't like that. That's one that just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I feel like I've heard that point a lot is why is Penn State at number 6, specifically in relation to Indiana? I'm not even talking about like compared to Tennessee or Notre Dame or BYU or anyone else, but like specifically to Indiana, because we're talking about the same conference. We're talking about not quite similar competition. I get it. Indiana's out of conference schedule. I mean, not that Penn State's out of conference schedule is all that great, but I mean, West Virginia is by far the best team of those 6 if you're going to line them up and stack them back to back. But it's just it has to count for something that you are beating the ever-loving snot out of everyone you played. Another thing I heard too in regards to Indiana's schedule is I get that it's going to get held against them, but you have to think what Indiana's normally scheduling these out-of-conference games for is to go to a bowl game.
Yep.
They didn't anticipate. I guarantee they did not anticipate, regardless of what Kurt Cignetti said in the preseason. I guarantee you they did not anticipate being here at 9-0, having beaten everyone on their schedule by at least 14 points.
Not only trying to be a Big Ten title contender, but a national title contender.
Yes.
At this point, it's insane.
Yes. So it's kind of one of those things where, you're going to get dinged because of your strength of schedule, but also, how can you really? I mean, I get how you can hold it against them, but also you got to you have to take kind of into perspective with that. It's not like this is Ohio State or Georgia scheduling a strong out of conference game because, I mean, not Ohio State this year, but a strong out of conference.
I mean, it was the same point we brought up with Michigan last year.
Sure.
Everyone bitched and moaned that Michigan hasn't played anybody.
No, I feel like,
no, but they dominated everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Dominated everyone. And then they won the national championship. I'm not saying Indiana's about to go win the national championship. Sorry, Hoosier Huddle or Sammy, if you guys are listening, that would be really cool if you did. I still think the odds are stacked against you for that at this point. But just making a fair argument that we all said that about Michigan last year. Nobody dare say it about Georgia because it's Georgia in the SEC, right? But said the same thing about Michigan last year. They don't play anybody. They're not doing this or that. So I don't know. I think we just need to make sure we give Indiana their flowers. And Ryan, do you think What is Michigan? 5-4 right now?
They're 5-4.
If
No, they're
Indiana
4-4.
okay.
4-4.
If Indiana whitewashes Michigan this week,
Mhm.
are they going to get any more credit than what they already have? Or are we going to get the argument, well, Michigan's not good this year. That one doesn't count.
Well, see, that's I think I had back when we were, I don't even want to say beefing with Indiana fans, but when Indiana they're 5-4. I apologize. They're 5-4. You were right. No, back when like either last week or 2 weeks ago, when I think you tweeted like an innocuous question about Indiana, and a couple Indiana
What a
fans
word.
were
What
in
a great word.
They were in our
Innocuous.
mentions being like, well, you're just crapping on Indiana. I'm like, that's not true at all.
We love Indiana.
I did hypothesize that I wonder if they come in and they beat oh, you idiot. Glenn, I don't think my bet's gonna hit.
No, because it's 35-21 the last I saw.
No, and he just threw a pick in the Western Michigan just threw a pick in the end zone. I hypothesize. I wonder if, I know Michigan's not good this year, but they still have a pretty decent defense, and I mean maybe that hinges on if Will Johnson and Jair Hill actually play this weekend. Because if they don't, that one might get ugly.
Oh my
But
God, yeah.
there's enough good on Michigan's defense still that I wonder if people look at it and say, all right, well, they at least played a defense that has some pretty good players that could potentially wreck
Has
a game.
first round draft picks on it.
And especially like they just played Oregon, right? And, Oregon won 38-17. If Indiana comes out and wins that game 45-10 or something like that, then you have a direct comparison from what the number one team in the country just did to what Indiana did. So we'll talk about this in a minute, but I kind of agree with you on that. I think Indiana being ranked where they were was probably worst case scenario for Michigan, because now you're not going to get an Indiana team that's overlooking you to your matchup with Ohio State next week. They're going to be looking at this game pissed as their opportunity to make a statement and say, you think this is where we belong? Well, we're going to show you.
They smell blood. It's like a shark in the water, and they're coming for a kill. And this may be the kill shot that puts Michigan down for the rest of the year.
Yep. One more point.
I also think, real quick, just on that one, I was just going to say, I think if they obliterate them this weekend, barring Penn State somehow just massacres Washington, which I don't know if that'll happen, I think the committee's going to put Indiana over Penn State after this week.
I could see it.
I think they realized maybe there's a slight mistake there that they made. They're hearing all the backlash, and then Indiana goes and proves something they'll be ahead of, and maybe ahead of Texas, depending on what Texas looks like.
Well, Texas is playing a third string quarterback, so they should at least.
So they're not going to get any credit for that one. So,
well, it's the SEC, Clinton. Anything is possible.
That's right. I'm surprised Florida's not ranked after having a 3.5 quarter game with Georgia.
One more point about the rankings is the fly on the wall here, who's not really getting crapped on at all, who probably should be, is Miami at number 4, because they haven't played. They played Louisville, and that's it. The rest of their schedule is not very good. I mean, Virginia Tech's a little bit better now, but again, they probably should have lost that game. They were down by 11 points to Duke in the third quarter.
Should have lost to Cal.
Should have lost to Cal. That's really a we're playing with fire situation, and they don't like, especially if Haynes King is still out for Georgia Tech this weekend. I don't know that Miami. They don't really play anyone the rest of the regular season who could beat them. I mean, maybe Syracuse the last weekend, but I doubt that.
It's on which Kyle McCord shows up. Sorry, Jacob.
Yeah, because you got Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. That's not a ton of meat left on the bone for Miami there. So that's a team that probably should skate to 12-0. And I'm not really sure. I mean, their offense is dang good. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, if you're the 3 seed and then you have to play
Alabama
in the second round or someone like that, they're going to score a lot of points. They can score with you. Because you gave up 31 points to Duke. Duke scored, 13 points on Northwestern earlier
Northwestern.
Not good. That's not good. Okay.
Well, Ryan, before we jump to the pick'ems, I had one more point.
Okay.
Notre Dame is at 10.
Yes.
Let me get this whole piece out. I'm going to propose a question to start and then add some more.
Oh, boy.
Are they, this is from your friend Joel Klatt, is Notre Dame an automatic lock to the playoff if they win out?
Yes.
They have a poor remaining schedule. Nobody, I mean, USC isn't giving you anything. Army is going to give you something, but we know how everyone wants to negate the Naval Academy and Army Academy's wins. What else is in there? They have one other game in there. Who do they have?
They play Florida State, Virginia, Army, and USC.
Yeah. So Florida State gives them nothing. Virginia is going to give them nothing. So pretty Miami-ish into the year.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting at 10, so they're on the cusp more than we said Indiana is.
Mm-hmm.
If the right dominoes were to fall, I don't know 100% what those were to be, but if A&M loses a few more, if the right dominoes fall, could the Irish be left out at 11-1?
I mean, the right dominoes to fall would have to be
A&M's got to lose at least one more game, maybe two.
I don't even know if it would be necessarily A&M losing 2 more games. What would have to happen is BYU would have to go 12-0 and then go 12-0,
lose the Big 12,
end up at like 7 in the final rankings heading into conference championship weekend, and then lose the Big 12 title game. Like, I think that's the only way that it ends up happening.
Yeah.
Or if like SMU is 13th or something like that and beats Miami in the ACC title game. Like, I think
so a bid stealer takes your spot, right?
I think that's the only.
I think it's highly unlikely, but he brought that up today, so it got my mind thinking. Like, it's certainly not impossible.
Well, because you have to think too, they're right behind BYU and Indiana. Unless Indiana loses on like a last-second field goal to Ohio State, let's say they lose a 7 to 10 point game, I feel like Notre Dame's going to end up jumping them. Mm-hmm. If BYU loses a game, they're going to end up jumping BYU, and all of a sudden, then you're 8th and you're safe.
Yeah. So it's going to take a lot. It's not impossible.
No, there is a universe it happens, but I think they're like 90% chance to make the playoff if they win out on the athletic model, or maybe it's just I think that's just assuming they win out. So
yeah,
I mean, there's
now. What if they lose the second one, Ryan? What if they lose to USC at the end of the season?
No, if they lose the second one, they're completely out because then they'll fall behind whoever between Alabama and LSU ends up winning in 2 weeks and is the 2-loss team. Well, I guess it's not necessarily entirely like if Ole Miss beats Georgia this weekend, I think things could get interesting for them too.
Yeah. I think where your problem lies if you lose the USC game. If you lose the Army this weekend, you get a chance to redeem yourself again and survive a few weeks.
They play Army the weekend before USC.
Sorry. If you lose the Florida State this week, oh God, that would probably just kill you.
If you lose the Florida State this weekend, you should get knocked out of the top 25 completely.
Yeah, so you're making it worse for me to say that if they lose the second game, I feel like they're out.
No,
I
don't.
You can't lose last week of the season to USC and get in. You don't have any other way to prove to the committee to show that it was a fluke or that you can be better.
No, that's why I don't think. Or that's why I think that the Northern Illinois loss ends up getting overlooked in the end, because if you finish the season on a 10-game winning streak, and especially like the next 3 weeks, you beat the crap out of Florida State, Virginia, and Army, and then you just beat USC on the road, like that's still a team that plays well at home. Then you can sit there and say, okay, that loss is a distant memory. We won 10 straight games by, I think their average margin of victory the last 6 is like 32 points a game or something like that. So then you can say we won 10 straight games by an average margin of victory of like 4 touchdowns a game. We are clearly a different team. That was clearly an aberration. And you have, even if, regardless of what happens with A&M and Louisville, as long as those teams don't completely crater down the stretch, and you can say, all right, we have 2 ranked-ish wins. We're 11-1. We deserve to be there, and I think that's accurate. You're at a point with you have such little meat on the bone of your overall schedule that if they lose one of these last 4 games, they're screwed. Like there's no other way to window dress that. They cannot lose another game and make it, given the makeup of the current like top 15.
I concur. Is it pick'em time?
I think I'm going to be picking my phone out of the drywall here because NIU is now up 3 touchdowns, and I think I'm
Bobcats, baby, holding up 34-0 and driving.
Well, so I just put all 4 MAC games on the same bet, and I hit both last night. Probably a little luckily because Central Michigan had wasn't a wild backdoor cover. They hit a backdoor cover at the end. I think the first 58 minutes of the game they completed 1 pass, and then completed 2 or 3 long ones on the last drive of the game to score and get the cover. I had Ball State last night. I have Ohio minus 19.5.
You got that easy.
I also picked Western Michigan +2, so that's probably dead unless we get a wild fourth quarter comeback here, which is probably not going to happen.
The OU has a kick return TD and a punt return TD in this game. Boy, if you'd have bet that, Ryan.
Beamer Ball, the Beamer Ball special. All right. Well, speaking of picks.
Picks of the week.
Clinton, we both had a very good weekend last week. You went 7-1. I went 6-2. Both of our locks of the week hit. We're on a heater here.
Bang, bang.
If you want to find a theme for this weekend, Clinton, we have teams ranked 1st, 2nd, 6th, 8th, and 10th who are all playing unranked teams and are all at least 2 touchdown favorites.
Who's the booty cheek week then?
Either booty cheek week or who's the one who's going to be upset on Saturday night?
There are no upsets happening. Not happening.
I don't know. Well, I may or may not agree with that. Starting on, there's not a. It's always the quiet weekends. I was going to say there's not a good game this weekend. There's really not a headliner game this weekend. So we're going to start Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Iowa, fresh off the aforementioned shellacking of Wisconsin last weekend, is a 6-point road favorite at UCLA, who's actually playing pretty good football
Got
here.
some spunk.
The last couple of weeks. Things that I am interested in this game, Clinton, is UCLA is actually pretty good against the run this year. Their rush defense currently ranked 11th in the country. The issue for UCLA has been their pass defense is atrocious, but fortunately for the Bruins, even with Brendan Sullivan last week, Iowa still can't really pass the ball a ton. Granted, they didn't. I mean, they had success when they tried to pass last weekend, but that's not been their forte this year. And for the Bruins, Ethan Garbers is starting to come on here. His last 2 games, he is 49 of 63 for 602 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he has added 15 rushes for 105 yards. That being said, Clinton, I think I'm rolling with Iowa here because your guy, I can't even call him my guy because he's on your fantasy team, but your guy, Caleb Johnson, has also been I need to get better with my timing on those, but that's the Caleb Johnson theme song for the for the season here. He's been really good, and you mentioned it on Sunday. If not for Ashton Genty, or maybe if Iowa was a little bit better overall this year, he'd be getting
3 losses.
Not 3 losses. Maybe he would be getting some Heisman love. He certainly deserves it. He's already over 1,000 yards on the season.
The thing is, he's not going to get the Doak Walker Award either because
I know that's
Ashton Genty's also going to get that.
He's also not. Well, do they put 2 running backs? They put 2 running backs on the first team All-American, right? I think.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so he could still be a first team All-American. Yeah, man, I'm rolling with Iowa in this one. I like how this offense has evolved with the insertion of Brendan Sullivan into the lineup. I think they're a little bit more diverse offensively and can keep UCLA on their toes a little bit. And Iowa's defense is pretty good too. I think they'll have a little bit something for Mr. Garbers in this one. So give me the Hawkeyes here -6 points.
I think Iowa's defense is the big key here, continuing to get healthy. I think they had maybe not all back, but main cog back last week against Wisconsin. Garbers has not seen a defense in the way that Iowa runs defense before. It's going to be tricky for him, even though Iowa does just the base level things, right? They do it very well. Going to force them into probably some turnovers, put their offense in advantageous spots. No, Iowa may not have the best passing offense, but Brendan Sullivan's legs add an additional dynamic component in running the ball, which then makes Caleb Johnson even more effective because you can't just run to him now and collapse on him. Because if you do, Sullivan's going to take it around the corner for a 10-plus yard gain on you. This is an easy pick for me. We kind of talked about this. I think it was post-show on Sunday for the upcoming week. Easy decision here. Time travel doesn't matter. Give me the Hawkeyes -6.
To Saturday. Big noon. What a big noon game.
What a fucking joke.
12 o'clock on Fox.
Big
Purdue
dud.
Travels to the Horseshoe to take on Ohio State, who is a 38-point favorite. Clinton, I've watched way too much Purdue football this year. There is a 0% chance they cover this spread. I think Ohio State might win by 70.
I agree. After we went and watched them, and I know Iowa or Oregon barely got theirs against them, that was also at home, and it's a Friday night. Weird thing.
6 days after the Ohio State-Oregon game, mind you.
Yes. Ohio State is fresh off their biggest win of the season. They've found something. They're sticking with the left tackle, left guard combo of Jackson and Kinsman moving forward. The way they ended that Penn State game with being road graders, I think that spells bad trouble for the Boilermakers. My bold prediction for this game is going to be that Judkins and Henderson each go over 100 yards rushing.
Yeah, I could see
Ohio
that.
State minus 38. Easy pick.
I feel like the only remote argument you can make for a Purdue cover in this one would be the hypothetical letdown look-ahead sandwich here coming off of Penn State right before Indiana for Ohio State.
And they have Northwestern next week.
Oh, shoot, that's right, because Indiana has a bye.
Yep.
So yeah, there is no look-ahead sandwich, but maybe a letdown, but I think Ohio State's finally kind of clicked offensively for the first time in a while this year. After a couple of, I mean, they were pretty good against Oregon until the Simmons injury happened, but offensive line click, they're gelling. I think they're going to come out and make a statement in this game. Ho-hum, 70-point Buckeyes win. I wonder if I could bet that spread. Probably not. Also, 12 o'clock on NBC, Minnesota, the Red Hot Gophers are a 6-point road favorite against Rutgers in this one. Rutgers, oh boy, not everyone. I don't want to speak for everyone. Our preseason darling, mostly because of the schedule, they have fallen on hard times, Clinton. They are sitting at 4-4 now after many thought that they could potentially get to 9 wins this year. The most that they can do is 8, and that would require winning out. I mean, not exactly a murderer's row of opponents, but Minnesota's playing pretty well. And the issue for Rutgers in this one, Clinton, is they're really good defensively. They're 9th in the country in yards allowed per game. Their rush defense, a little lagging behind the pass defense, 37th against the run this year for the Gophers. So maybe there's some room for Kyle Monangai to have some work on the ground, but the issue for Rutgers is their defense is banged up. They have not been good. And Max Brosmer, after a little bit of a slow start last week, still played pretty well. He's playing pretty well overall. He's got pretty strong chemistry now going with Daniel Jackson, and I think Darius Taylor has a big game in this one. Another easy pick for me on this one, which means it's probably not going to hit. Give me the Gophers minus 6.
I got nothing left really to believe in Rutgers at this point. I think when you give a team who we were so high on 6 points at home, you'd be liable to take them, right? Because then they get points against Washington at home. But that was also a game that
I think so.
Washington really struggled with not getting penalties, making bad decisions.
Washington had like 530 yards in that game.
But they also had tons of penalties that cost them.
And missed field goals.
I think Rutgers defense beat up. You got an offense that has Darius Taylor, Daniel Jackson, and Max Brosmer, who is figuring this thing out. I was talking with one of our Minnesota Twitter followers today. I wish we could get a second year of Brosmer with this Minnesota offense. I think he's settling in now at the big level in finding a groove. I think there's no chance that Rutgers wins this. Minnesota's defense is too good. They can't pass. And even if they could, Minnesota's pass defense is good, so they won't be able to do it anyways. I feel like Minnesota can load the box and man up and say, we're going to stop Monangai. Another great Big Ten running back battle here. But I'm confident enough in this one that I'm going to say Gophers minus 6, and then is my lock of the week.
See, you got to give me a heads up on these things, man. I don't even. Oh, no. Oh, man, I completely blew that. Wow, this is terrible radio.
Lock of the week.
I'm not going to lock it up, but I appreciate the enthusiasm on that one, Clinton. 3:30 CBS. Or wait a minute. Was I going to lock that one up? Shit.
Lock of the week.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to
double lock of the week.
All right, which that kind of counts as a kiss of death, right?
Probably, but it's not going to give him a kiss of death. Rutgers was already given the kiss of death. They're done.
Yeah, if sorry guys, sorry Minnesota fans, if you lose, that's on us. 3:30 CBS, Michigan traveling to Bloomington to take on the Hoosiers, who are a 14-point favorite in this one, which is kind of funny considering they were only 7.5-point favorites against Michigan State last week. Although I guess you could make an argument that if that, well, it was on the road. I guess you can make
It
an
was on the
argument if that
road.
I guess you can make an argument if that was at home, it would probably have been closer to 14 as well. Things that I have Googled before we went on because I hadn't seen an update, but things I'm looking for in this one are Will Johnson and Jair Hill playing? Because if they are not playing, I think Michigan might lose this game by 1,000,000 points because their pass defense is not very good, Clinton. 95th in the country against the pass. And if you're playing without your two starting quarterbacks against this passing offense, which is 11th in the country in yards per game, this one could get out of hand, and it can get out of hand quickly.
My biggest question, Indiana's offensive line has seen nothing like Grant and Graham yet, even just in general, probably the pass rush of Michigan at its peak. But that pass rush, we've talked about it before, that the pass rush aids the DBs and the DBs aid the pass rush. If you cannot cover a soul in the defensive backfield, it will not matter for your pass rush because Curtis Rourke is going to eat you alive. We have already talked about how pissed off Indiana is going to be and motivated. The home stadium is going to be absolutely rocking for this game. They get their chance at the big name, the big boys, the team who won the championship last year that Michigan fans continue to like to remind everyone of. Indiana big in this game. I'd be willing to take this one up to -21. The Hoosiers are going to pound the Wolverines this weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking Indiana as well. I think Indiana's usually, if I remember correctly from watching Indiana this year, they're pretty good with a quicker pass game. Short hooks, slants. I think that'll be something that they employ to try to.
And no one has stopped their run game yet, so
Michigan State had
they slowed them a little bit.
Yeah, they only had like 120 yards last week.
Yeah, but they complement well. So
yes, so that'll be a fun one to watch in the afternoon slot. Mostly because of the Schadenfreude, but I digress. 7:00 Big Ten Network, Maryland traveling west. Is this the furthest road trip in the Big Ten?
Isn't there a Rutgers UCLA or Rutgers USC? That's probably further, isn't it?
I wonder
Jersey.
I might have to Google that one. We might have to fact check this. Maryland traveling to Oregon. The Ducks are a 25-point favorite. The good news for Oregon, the good news for Maryland, Clinton, is their rush defense is very good. The bad news is they have one of the worst pass defenses in the country. And Oregon is very good very good throwing the football. Potentially, well, I think Tez Johnson, I haven't seen a definitive update, but it sounds like he's going to be out at least a couple of weeks. So Oregon will be without their number one receiver. But I also saw they might maybe get Gary Bryant Jr. back this week, which would be a nice little boost to the pass game. But in the absence of Tez Johnson last week, Trayshawn Holden stepped up. Now that he's stopped spitting on people, he had 6 catches for 149 yards against Michigan last week. As for Oregon, I can't figure it out, man. I don't know why I'm mixing these teams up. As for Maryland, I'm not really sure what there is to be excited about in this game. I guess Ty Felton, but even with how the offense has sputtered a little bit the last few weeks, he hasn't been his same explosive self. At home, long road trip for the Terps. Give me Oregon in this one. I think they cover it pretty easily.
I'm speechless here because I don't have nice words to say about Maryland at this point. I think you're in for this is another world of trouble here. 25 is big, but
a lot of
you're
points.
playing the number one team in the country. You're now it's not Oregon flying 3 hours to you. It's you're flying, well, not 3 hours, 3 time zones to you. It's you flying 3 time zones to Oregon. Now, Maryland has done crazier things and hung around in games against Michigan and Ohio State that we didn't think they would. That was better defensive Maryland-led teams. I think Oregon, they don't really need to flex, right? At some point, they could play 3 quarters, get their guys out, and Maryland somehow gets within the range of 25 here. After you see the Tez Johnson injury that sometimes throws up a red flag to coaches like, if they don't need to be in, we probably don't need them to be in. Your biggest thing again this week, get Dylan Gabriel out of here healthy. That's what you need. He is the key to everything. If he gets hurt, this season is done.
That's true.
Doesn't mean you won't make the playoff, but you're not winning a national championship unless he's the quarterback. I'm taking Oregon minus 25, though. I don't think Maryland has anything in the tank for them.
7:30 NBC.
The cock.
Well, this one's not on Peacock.
Which one? Oh, you're doing Notre Dame. Oh, thought you were giving us the whiteout.
Oh, Clinton.
NBC. There you go.
Florida State, you are. Clinton. Would you believe me if I told you that after DJ Uyunglele got hurt, their quarterback play somehow
has gotten better?
Got worse.
What?
The last 3 games, they have not been able to settle on Brock Glenn or Luke Kromenhoek because they have both been awful. Their last 3 games, they are combined 31 for 76 for 403 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
What?
That's like 130 yards passing a game. Those are some Michigan numbers.
That is the true definition of straight ass.
Notre Dame is a 26.5 point favorite in this one. My dad texted me this week. He said, if I told you that leading into this game, Notre Dame would be a 26.5 point favorite over Florida State, what would you have thought? I didn't have an answer for him. So not only is Florida State's passing offense, which is bad, going against one of the best passing defenses in the country, Florida State has the 115th ranked rush defense going against Notre Dame's 14th ranked rush offense. Clinton, Notre Dame is going to cover this game, and they might win by 50 points. I think they absolutely. The last time a bad Florida State team came to South Bend in November was 2018, and Brandon Wimbush was starting because Ian Book had a lacerated kidney in Florida, or Notre Dame still won 42-13, and I think that's going to kind of be what happens in this one. So Notre Dame covers, and I don't think this game is particularly close.
Ryan, have you ever watched Harry Potter or read it?
I read the first 2 books. I read about half of the third, and then I got bored and stopped.
Okay. Well, in the third book, The Prisoner of Azkaban, there's a thing called a Dementor, and it gives a kiss, and with the kiss, it sucks your soul out.
What?
Notre Dame is the Dementor in this game, and they're going to plant the Dementor's kiss on Florida State and suck their soul out, and then they are done.
That's not where I thought we were going on this show today.
Gone. Dementor's kiss to Florida State here. Notre Dame minus 26.5.
We're going to agree on probably every game this week because
we set this off air on Sunday that we were going to agree on all of them.
Yeah. 8 o'clock
on the cock.
Washington traveling east again. This time they at least get a night game. Yeah. Penn State, a 13.5 point favorite in this one. This is kind of really the only one I struggled with this week, Clinton. I'm kind of figuring out what to do. Washington has a pretty good pass defense. Unfortunately for them, that is not Penn State's strength. 71st rush defense for the Huskies, which I think could potentially be a little bit problematic given Penn State's propensity for running the football. I'm curious to see how Penn State responds to last week because it's not like in previous years when you lose to Ohio State and it's like your whole season's over and what do you have to play for? Like everything is still in front of them. Are you going to come out and mope around a little bit, start slow again? I mean, they started quick last week. They kind of bucked the trend, and it still didn't really help them. Are you going to revert to Penn State of old and come out slow against a Washington pass attack that's pretty good, right? Like Penn State, Washington has some pretty good athletes at the skill positions on offense. Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston. So they certainly can stress this Penn State defense, particularly. We saw Ohio State get deep on them a couple of times last week. I don't think that Washington is going to be much of a threat to upset in this game. Again, we've talked ad nauseum about Washington's not football, well, technically football related issues, but discipline, mistakes, missing field goals. However, I do think Washington covers the spread, so give me the 13.5 points here. I will take the Huskies for that.
We talked about it last week. When you come off a big battle against a big opponent, you tend to be beat up a little bit. You tend to not put your best foot out on the field or best foot forward in your next game. Penn State has a proclivity for starting slow, and you could argue they kind of started slow last week because Will Howard gifted them the touchdown that got them to 10-0. You're right with Washington's run defense. How does Kotelnicki bounce back calling plays this week? Singleton, Allen, how healthy is Singleton? How do they utilize Warren? Prbula, run game. Aller's health, run game for him, mobility. My big thing is Washington has an offense that can stress the Penn State defense. 3 good wide receivers, a good tight end, a good quarterback, and a really good running back in Jonah Coleman. I'm eager to see how Penn State handles that. If they're going to be able to win a game in the playoff, they have to be able to get a team like this and shut their pass game or their offense down in a manner. Is any word on Denai Sutton? I'm assuming probably not playing this week again.
I have not seen anything, no.
Yeah. And then so you still running Carter by himself. I like Washington to cover plus 13, but Penn State wins.
So we agreed on everything this week.
We knew we would.
Terrible radio.
That's terrible for you because you still have to catch up to me.
Well, I know I'm probably not going to catch up to you this year. So the fun, how I'm making this fun this weekend is, since I'm so confident in all these picks, which that's your first cue that this is going to go horribly wrong.
KOD every one of these.
$10 on a 6-way pick. Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, and Washington, all against the spread, to win $470. So if anyone wants to have some fun and jump in on that, let's roll. Let's make some money.
Ryan's willing to pay all of your $10 bets to do so.
That's not happening. I will not do that. Declined. So I want to leave you today with one question. Of these 5 ranked versus unranked matchups, if you were to look at them and say, not calling it going to happen, but if you were to say this is the most likely team to be upset this weekend, what team would you say?
Who are my 5 unranked and unranked matchups? Not all of them, right? Because Minnesota's not ranked.
Minnesota's not ranked, so that would be Purdue versus Ohio State, Michigan versus Indiana, Maryland versus Oregon, Florida State versus Notre Dame, and Washington versus Penn State.
Who's most likely to get upset, like outright win the game? Penn State.
Outright win the game.
Penn State.
Interesting. I was going to say Indiana.
I'm concerned with Penn State. They had players walk off the field during the singing of the alma mater at the end of last week's game. It's another loss to Ohio State. Can they get over the hump? Washington is a good team, man. If Washington can come in and handle the whiteout and not poop down their leg with penalties and stupid errors, they will be in this game until the end. That's a big if, but I think it's most likely Washington to knock off Penn State.
Interesting.
You said you think Michigan over Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, Davis Warren's, he's not playing fantastic. Again, the bar is the floor, but he's at least playing a little bit better. I don't know that Michigan's offensive line is good enough to consistently score against Indiana is the issue. But if you're looking, I saw a mock draft and it's not like it's just like one of the weird ones that someone puts out. Michigan had 5 first-round picks on it. They had the usual suspects plus Josiah Stewart.
Mhm.
It's wild to me that Michigan is so bad with 5 first-round picks. That's insane.
Their defense is so tired because their offense can't do anything.
It's just crazy. But the overarching theme with this is, especially if Will Johnson and Jair Hill play, then there is some talent on that defensive side of the ball. Maybe they turn Indiana over into a couple mistakes. I don't know. That would be, again, I don't think it's particularly likely. I would give it like a 5% chance of happening outright, but I think that would be my pick.
I'd give Washington a 40% chance to get this one outright.
Interesting. Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with that because I agree with your premise that if Washington plays a good, complete, mistake-free game, I certainly think that they are good enough, talented enough to get Penn State if they're not at 100%.
Yeah,
it'll be fun to watch. There's certainly things to look at this weekend, even though on the surface, the overall slate of games isn't the best. We all know those are usually the best weekends.
The banger of the week is LSU Bama. I know it's not Big Ten, but we are a partial LSU podcast here. So whoever loses this game's playoff hopes are over, and SEC title hopes are over.
That's a real running joke, Clinton, because one of my coworkers mentions that to me too. It's like, you guys talk about LSU a lot. Not only do we have Bama LSU, but also have Georgia Ole Miss. So
that's right. I just don't believe in Ole Miss. So Georgia's going to kick their ass.
Some games with playoff implications out there that we should all be paying attention to because that impacts our Big Ten teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana, Boise State, SMU, BYU. BYU's at Utah this week. I know there's no Cam Rising, but it is at Utah in a rivalry game. That's a game I wouldn't be surprised if BYU loses.
Got to throw the records out. It's a rivalry game. Them's the rules. Thank you for tuning in on our not normal evening because Clinton has a date with Misery tomorrow night.
Yeah, we're getting some wings, so I will enjoy that. But I do not expect the Bengals to win tomorrow. I hope that I am wrong, and I hope I'm celebrating, but I don't expect them to win.
If you are still listening, thank you. We appreciate you being here. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Well, if you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel at ITPCFB. If you are listening in the podcast feed, you know where to find us. We're at Inside the Pylon on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. And make sure you are subscribed to the feed there as well so you can get that notification whenever we drop an episode when we start having typical times like this.
We would appreciate, tell one friend about us. Tell one friend to follow us. The Gram, the Twitter, the Tube, Spotify, Apple. Tell one friend. Give us a follow. Share it with them. Help us grow the show. We appreciate it.
We will be back on our normal schedule last week starting Sunday. I skipped today. Sunday at 9 p.m. to recap hopefully what will be an exciting week in Big Ten football. Everyone, thanks for tuning in this evening. We will see you on the other side.
See you.